So I'm going to talk to you about designing your design career, which is a topic that fascinates me and should really interest anyone who is a designer, I think. It's a painful process to design your design career. It's not easy. I love this quote. I couldn't believe it was a real quote when I first saw it. But learning the truth about yourself, about what you enjoy doing, about what kind of a designer you are, is painful. I've seen it be painful. I've felt it be painful. And I'm going to take you a little bit of the way through the process that I think kind of works, or at least starts to get there in terms of going through this pain and coming out the other side. So I've been a lot of things. You can tell I'm kind of scatty and don't really know what I am at all because I keep changing my mind. But I've been lots of different things in my career, and right now I'm building some software to help with this problem, which I'm not really going to talk about. But if you find me afterwards, I will bore you for hours. So my journey through this has been kind of a wild and wacky one. And I've changed my mind repeatedly about what kind of a person I am. So I started off, I graduated in a kind of a graphic design degree, started off designing books. I loved books and type. Did that for a couple of years while also doing something else on the side, which then turned out to be the thing that took me past a couple of jobs and into starting my own agency, which then I very quickly realized I didn't really like agencies or the agency model for me, but got about a day away from growing that into a bigger company, but won a contract, tried to hire someone. That would have been my first full-time employee. They rejected my advances, which was good because then the client that I won then kind of went into administration. So all of this together, alongside in the same week, me having an interesting coffee with a man who decided to start a bank, meant I then turned into a product designer almost overnight. I was also living in Stockholm at the time and moved my poor wife back from her dream job to what was then to be my dream job. Kind of one of my few regrets in my design career to kind of do that. But all of these things have taught me something new about myself. So, fast forward a few years from that moment. My chosen problem as a founder is where do we want to go and how do we get there? As designers, we're inundated with titles, we're inundated with skills that we're meant to learn. We're inundated with the need to be user-focused but at the same time highly technical. All of these ends of the scale are hard to define themselves and hard to know what to do next. Every different company will want something new from you, and frankly, most of them want all of them. So, mapping your career, this is highly reductive, apologies, and careers go in all sorts of different directions, but assuming that there is a line that you can draw. I can't draw a line through my career, but let's go with this for now. You'll get a few jobs across your career. Each one will teach you something new about yourself. It may take you in a new direction, may take you back in the same direction again. It may keep you honing those same skills that you've been learning over and over again, becoming more and more senior in the same kind of disciplines. That wasn't the case for me. So I've kind of tried to distill into 3 parts what I think is a good methodology for deciding, being more conscious about how you design your career. If you kind of sleepwalk through it, you may end up repeatedly being in jobs that you were kind of wooed by and maybe had they were good companies, they would look good on your CV, maybe the salary was good, maybe your title was the title that you would have liked, and you end up doing work that you're not that interested in. So, if you, like me, would like to have a meaningful career, a career that you enjoy, then hopefully we can go on this journey together. Okay, so finding out what kind of a designer you want to be. I'm going to tell you a little story about 2 designers. This is my illustration skills. I'm available for commissions. So designer 1 and designer 2. And by the way, I rewrote this talk today in part based on meeting these two real designers this week. They are real people. Their names have been changed. Actually, they don't have names. I mean, they do in real life. They don't have names in this presentation. Shut up. So, designer one. They're both, for the sake of argument, same age, same stage in their careers. They're junior people that are just kind of in the process of graduating. So, designer one. He interned at one of the blue tech giants well, I'm not going to say any more about this particular tech giant, but one of the big names that you will probably know, almost definitely be using or have used in the past. He interned there, they offered him a job. He knew that when he graduated, he was going to go back into that company. It was all set up for him. They were going to give him free food. Free breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They had a pretty cool brand, or at least a brand that everyone had heard of. Great salary, 30% over industry average. Woo. And when you're a penniless student, that goes a long way. Designer number two, who I met on the same day. He had actually graduated a year before, and he'd started at a startup in London, commuting from Oxford. And his salary was just about paying for his commute. So he was living at home and eating food that his parents were cooking for him while struggling to maintain or keep his head above water in terms of having any kind of a life outside work. And of course, this startup was also working him pretty hard. So, no money. As a result, he decided to go off and freelance. And also went looking for more interesting work. He found himself involved in a community of people that needed design work, and it was an unpaid gig. It was something that he was doing on the side as a passion project. And with that comes a huge amount of responsibility. And as someone who hasn't done a huge amount of design before, necessarily, you're going to screw things up. So fast forward a couple of years' time. They've both been in these roles for a while. The tech giant guy, if he gets offered something new or something interesting turns up in his life, an opportunity to maybe take a risk or to do something that is outside his comfort zone, is he going to give up all this stuff to move somewhere else? He has an expectation of a salary now that many can't match. He gets 3 meals a day, which many can't match. Whereas this person is probably going to be looking for opportunity. So I found this an interesting example of two people who are doing very legitimate things. This struggle is real. It's hardcore and a great story. This is an amazing opportunity. It's a super smart person who has clearly done very well. But their outcomes are probably going to be quite different. This person is learning how to take a huge amount of responsibility. Is learning how to take risks, learning that actually if you screw up, you can get back up and you can keep going. Whereas this person is learning how to operate in a huge company, probably learning from exceptional designers, but within a very small sphere. If you were to choose one of these two options, this is my straw poll moment, I'm interested in which you would choose. So, I know which one I'd choose, but who would choose, I've kind of led you a little bit, but who would choose blue person? Okay, half-ish, maybe just under half. So green, okay, I definitely led you. So you gave the right answer. Congratulations, greenies. This person, I really liked both of these people. This person, I was like, this was me 11 years ago. It was like an unbelievable conversation talking to myself 11 years ago. So I kind of had this emotional engagement with this story. But these are kind of unconscious decisions that people are making. They're making out of necessity. This person has been given Doesn't matter about that stuff. This person has been given an amazing opportunity with everything they could ever want. I mean, you write the name of the company you want to work for as a product designer coming out of university, it's probably that company. Whereas this person has been given much less and done amazing things with it. So what are we optimizing for? What do we really care about? We could care about salary. We could care about the title that we're getting. We could optimize for learning. We could optimize for autonomy and being given a huge amount of responsibility. None of these are bad answers. None of these are wrong. But we should decide which one we're optimizing for. So having a think about that. And then, of course, I'm not going to go too far into the actual skills that make up a designer. We would be here all night. But within that, working out what you enjoy doing at your job. So if you're currently in a role where you're doing some stuff that you enjoy and other stuff that you don't, notice that. Take time with that and make sure the thing you do next allows you to do more of the stuff that you enjoy. And don't just run at the next pay packet. Or do if, you can do that as well. I wouldn't. Okay, so once you've identified what you like to do, what kind of a designer you are, what you care about, which is hard enough, that's very hard. You need to find support. You need to find people that are going to advocate for you. You need to find people that are going to support your growth. And a lot of companies, so this could be within the team that you're in, or it could be outside that team within a community of maybe other designers or finding a project on the side. But you need to make sure that your company, or indeed your community, but definitely your company, is supporting your growth. And there are some signs, I think, that I've seen that show that your company is or isn't supporting your growth. So you may be able to make a kind of mental checklist here. So in my opinion, your mileage may vary. A company that cares about your career trusts you with more responsibility over time. So that's my first opinion. But if you've been at a company for 2 years, you should be given more stuff as you go along. They should be recognizing the work that you're doing and giving you more, or putting you in positions that make you feel uncomfortable to see whether you sink or swim. Definitely, if you're asking for more responsibility, you should be given it. If you're not being given more responsibility when you ask for it, then you need to ask why. And if you're not trusted, then you need to work on that with your manager. The second one is, it's easy for companies to kind of give a conference budget, all this kind of stuff. What are they sacrificing? So I find this a particularly interesting one. If a company is willing to not just give you some money, which is for many companies, frankly, quite cheap, but is also willing to give up your time at the company to go and learn something that may not help your time at the company, then that is really supporting you. If you say, I really want to go and learn to prototype, and at the company, at that point in time, there aren't really any projects that have need for prototyping, but your manager hears you and says, you know what, this feels like something that is going to help you, and it's not entirely unselfish, because that means they may get to keep you for longer as well, so it's in their interest too. But if they're helping you do that, then that's a good sign. And the third one, your company holds you and itself accountable for how you evolve. What that really means is goal setting. I haven't really told you much about myself yet. I'm aware of that. This first section is taking a little bit longer than I thought it would. I was going to get to that, but most recently, before I was a founder, I was a design manager. And I found it very hard to set goals with my team. I would go to them and I would say, what goals do you want to set? And they'd come back to me and they'd say, well, what goals do you want me to set? And we'd end up in this impasse where we couldn't decide together what they should grow in. I was expecting them to come to me and say what they were passionate about, or what they felt that they should grow in given the team they were working in, or whatever it was. And they were hoping that I would say to them, here's where you're weak. So this is a tricky kind of negotiation period. It's like you're signing a contract between two people. You and your manager, you're saying, hey, I'm going to learn this thing, or I'm going to get better at this. And your manager is saying, I'm going to do everything I can to support your growth. So what that really means is you're given time or space or put in the right team to be able to actually grow. So that's the third one. If hopefully you've been able to, I'm assuming most people here are designers and in teams. If you're able to kind of keep a mental checklist of how you feel about those three, that may be useful. I want to tell you a story about a man who some of you will have met, if not in real life, then definitely online. This guy called Matt Vagney. He started the Triangles Slack group. So if anyone is in that, triangles-slack.com, you should all join. It's great. But 4 or 5 years ago, he was the head of design at List. And Matt has done exceptionally well. I mean, he's an incredibly smart guy, very precocious, super interesting to talk to, incredibly enthusiastic, very fast learner. So very unsurprising that by the time he was 24, 25, he was head of design at a company that was a meaningful size. And he could have said, you know what, after List, I want to go and be head of design somewhere else, or director of design, or VP of design. I want to keep growing my title. But instead, Matt said, what do I enjoy doing? And at List, he'd found most joy. I did ask him whether I could tell his story, by the way. It's not completely weird. He most enjoyed writing code. And actually at List, the entire design team had been writing code, and he had really enjoyed being involved with engineers and contributing to the code base and shipping. So when he came to Deliveroo and worked with me at Deliveroo, he came in as a product designer, but within about 3 weeks, it was very clear that Matt was not going to be doing much product design. Or at least the product design he was going to be doing was so different to what we were used to that we effectively immediately spun up a team around this guy to make sure that he could be the interface between the front end and the design team. And in the time that Matt and I were both at the company, which was probably about 1.5 years, I saw him open Sketch like 5 times. But he helped the design team more than most because he found a way to communicate between design and engineering. And he did that as a senior product designer. He wasn't a head of, or he wasn't a manager. He wasn't anything kind of managerial. He didn't want to keep that status. He didn't care about the title. He cared about doing the work that he loved, and he did that as a senior designer. And now he's left Deliveroo, and he's a software engineer. So I love Matt's story because it's so easy to just care about what your next title is going to be, and to make sure that it looks good on LinkedIn, and that your narrative looks good, and that you can bump up your salary every so often, so you can, because that's what people do, to buy more stuff or whatever. But but following your dreams means that now when I go for a pint with Matt, I can't shut him up about work. I mean, in a good way. Like, he's always like pulling out prototypes and he was telling me about receipt printers for like 15 minutes last time I saw him. He loves his job. He loves his job. So, okay, so that's a good example of doing that well, in my opinion. So, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. And if you don't get it, look elsewhere. That's what I would say. Okay, and part 3. Who here has a portfolio online? With actual work in it? Okay, I'm impressed. Keeping a portfolio of work that is up to date and representative of your current skills is a bloody nightmare. I stopped years ago. I'm too lazy for that. So anyone who has tried to keep any track record of the design work that they've done in a way that doesn't mean that they're probably in breach of contract because they're downloading entire folders of sketch files and putting them on their Dropbox, which I know everyone does and no one talks about. It's all fine. I'm not going to tell anyone off. But it's really hard to do this. It's really hard. And even then, going back to a sketch file a year later and trying to remember what the hell went on in that process, and then looking at the thing that is now shipped, which has completely changed from what you shipped at the time, which wasn't even the same as your sketch file. I mean, and that's just the visual design side. Alongside that, there's all the meetings that you went to, all the communication you went through, post-it notes on walls. Pictures of post-it notes on walls. Well done, you had a meeting. But like, actually, that is a really important part of the process, but it's so badly communicated when it's just a picture of post-it notes on walls. But there's no better way to communicate. How do you do it? I don't know. I have an idea. Anyway, that's for later. So, jumping from team 1 to team 2 to team 3, and maintaining a record of the work that you've done, and compounding the value of yourself over multiple teams, when all of the work disappears on your last day, and you start with a blank sheet on day 1 of your next job, that sucks. That sucks. I can't remember why I put this slide in again. I did have a good, oh yeah. So this is when I talk about myself. Okay, so I'm going to do this very quickly. Most recently, I was a design manager at Deliveroo. I left in February. I was at Deliveroo at a time when we grew from 150 to 2,000 employees total. The design team grew from 4 to 40, including kind of content and research folks. And I was looking after, at the most, I had 8 direct reports. And I was a first-time manager. And the big problem that I had, that I spent a huge amount of time doing, and we as a team spent a huge amount of time doing, is writing down the skills that we expected the team to have in a way that we felt that was meaningful to us and represented the work that had to happen. And then it ended up in a spreadsheet. It took us like 9 months to write. Spreadsheet went out, drum roll, worked for a couple of months, then people stopped looking at it. This big dream spreadsheet. And that's because it's a spreadsheet. Like, who wants to look at a spreadsheet? You can't see yourself on it. It's not mobile optimized. Like, it doesn't inspire excitement. And it's just some descriptions of some people that may or may not be you, because who are you to judge whether that statement represents your skills? What we were trying to get to was this, which is kind of easy to write and write on a napkin, like, here's our career ladder, or maybe it even has been set for you by HR. And then what are the skills that map to each of these roles so that you know how to get to the next role? Took us ages, didn't really work. I think Deliveroo have done a better job since I left. Maybe there's no connection, maybe there is, who knows. But what we ended up looked a little something like this, like one of these kind of, there's color coding and it's hard work. It's really hard to know what to do with this. It requires huge, heavy management process, and frankly, management process by the people that wrote it, and as soon as they leave, even the next people that turn up are given that tool and don't know how to use it. So when I was an when I was a designer and designing stuff, I enjoyed all the luxuries of the design world, with the sketches and the Figmas and the framers. What are the kids using these days? Who knows? But then you become a manager and there's nothing left for you. You're back in spreadsheet land and you're back in Google Docs and you have the odd HR tools scattered about. And it underserves managers, who in turn underserve their teams, who in turn can't track their skills. And this was what I decided I was going to solve. It's really hard. Okay, so I'm going to rant about HR tools really quickly. I don't know how we are for time. So, for those of you who are designing HR tools, I don't hate HR tools. I do a bit, but I don't. They serve a purpose, but their customer is the HR team. It's important that you know that the HR team works for the business, not for the you. So, in a typical employee life cycle, your efficiency goes up as you learn more at the company. You become really good at your job, theoretically. But all this time, you're learning stuff It's kind of exciting, and then it kind of gets boring. HR teams know this, and anyone who cares about retention knows this. And what HR tools try and do is they improve you faster, and then they stop you going away. And this is kind of their goal. And there's also, if you've done a performance management or a learning management, onboarding tools, engagement surveys, and then by the end, things are just happening like, come on, like here's a new title, stick around. And then as soon as you leave, you're out of the system, you're gone. That's not conducive to helping you to grow beyond the company, unfortunately. And by the way, there are lots of companies that are really helping with this, and lots of HR tools that want to help with this as well. It's just not the business model of the tool. So fundamentally, it might be an also-ran. And more importantly, you're not going to be able to keep the data in an HR tool, even if it is working really well for you. And that includes, internal documentation. So you should be doing this yourself. Dropbox, by the way, is Dropbox paper, where you can write things, not where you can steal your company's files. Very important that you said that I make that clear. You shouldn't be doing that. But there's lots of things that people do, whether you're keeping personal notes in a note-making tool, whether you're creating public record of your work, which is super hard work, whether you're writing about it, writing case studies and writing blog posts about your work, which is a really great way to do this. And you can kind of do it as you go along. But whatever you're doing, you owe it to yourself to kind of keep record of the work that you're doing, because no one else is going to do it for you. You've got to make sure that you have a good answer for wherever you work next, or for your 80th birthday, when someone stands up and gives a speech about your career, that you know that they are going to have something to say about you. There's a fantastic, Holly's nodding, I bet you've done this exercise, but there's a great backcasting exercise where you say, on your 80th birthday, what do you want people to stand up and say about you? And a lot of people realize that they're not seeing their family enough, but just to give you a... So, in summary, this is my last slide, nearly last slide. Here are the things that I think that people need to be consciously doing. You can't kind of assume that this is happening for you. This is something that you need to be thinking about yourself. Sitting back and assuming that the next job will come up. Right now, we're in a great market for designers. There's lots of jobs. That may not always be the case. And as we know, it's an unfair system, and some people get all the jobs and other people don't get them. So do everything you can to give yourself the best chance of finding the job that you love, not just the next one that comes up because you need one, but something that is really going to make you happy and fulfilled. I told you this stuff is really hard, but super important. And this is my one slide. I didn't want to plug anything, but this is my one slide to plug the thing that I'm building, which tries to solve all of that. But it's not launched yet, but you can join the waitlist. It's called Progression, and it aims to create a public record, well, optional public, but a record of your work for you, and also help managers to set you things that are clear for you to solve, understand your skills better, and to help you to grow at companies. But also, there's a level of data that you will own so that you can take that with you. So this is something that I want to succeed at. I may or I may not. So don't put all your eggs in this basket. I'm putting all my eggs in this basket, but that's my personal decision. Make notes. Work hard on your career. Don't just... It's really easy to just open up Framer or Figma and learn something new that's a technical skill. Focus on yourself as well, because that's something that other people won't. You've got to look after number one. So, if anyone wants to know more about this, I can tell you about it afterwards. I think that's it. Okay, cool. Thank you.